I had lived as a dependent in the Duke's mansion for 5 years, always treading carefully, hoping only that when I came of age, I could find a good family to marry into. The young masters and ladies were all kind, but the heir was always stern and distant. With a troubled heart, I brought him pastries every day, only to overhear him admonishing his younger sister. Lou is just like her aunt, scheming and greedy for wealth and status. You should keep your distance from her. Only then did I realize he had long seen through my intentions to climb the social ladder. Fearing he would thwart me, I secretly married myself off while he was away on his travels. Pei Qingyan returned from his travels. The old madam was overjoyed and held a feast to welcome him home. I brought my daughter along to the banquet and also took the chance to visit my aunt. Marriage changes things. To call on my aunt, I had to send a formal request to the Duke's mansion. After several times, the old madam grew displeased. My aunt didn't want me to suffer their disdain, so she told me to visit less. The mansion was always filled with guests, and all the visitors were nobles. Knowing my place, I found a secluded corner and sat down, as inconspicuous as ever. Pei Qingyan sat to the left of the old madam. 3 years apart hadn't changed him much, but when he spoke with others, he seemed distracted. Even sitting this far away, I could tell his gaze was wandering, as if searching for someone. Qingyan, Qingyan, the old madam called him repeatedly. Pei Qingyan snapped back to reality, behaving as usual. I glanced around and saw no one was paying attention to this spot. I had eaten several pieces of osmanthus cake, making quite a commotion. The women at the same table cast strange glances. I downed 2 cups of tea and gave an awkward smile. Then I looked at Pei Qingyan. He was greeting the sisters, a smile on his lips, looking to be in excellent spirits. War had been taken away by my aunt's maid early in the morning. She's still young and can't sit still on such occasions. Not to mention her, actually I couldn't sit still either. I was already 10 when I came to the Duke's mansion to seek refuge with my aunt. My temperament was long set. No matter how much I later learned etiquette from the young ladies, I never developed the bearing of a proper lady. At banquets in noble families, eating is a trivial matter. The most important thing is introductions and networking among all parties. Most of the ladies from various families were close friends, exchanging greetings. The venue gradually became lively. Taking advantage of no one noticing, I quietly slipped away from the table. My aunt's courtyard was at the westernmost side of the Duke's mansion. I was afraid Wu would get anxious waiting, so I quickened my pace. With a thud, I tripped and fell without paying attention. Good thing the banquet was being held today. Everyone in front was busy, no one saw. Just as I was thinking this, a low male voice sounded behind me. Such a fluster, how unbecoming. A pair of hands with distinct knuckles reached out in front of me. I didn't answer. I pushed myself up from the ground, patted the dust off my skirt, and performed a proper curtsy. Greetings, Your Highness the heir. To be honest, I was somewhat afraid of Pei Qingyan. My aunt was the eldest sister of my mother. That year when Qingzhou suffered a great drought and my maternal grandfather was ill, she, being beautiful, sold herself and became a concubine of the Duke. The Duke's mansion was a place where rules mattered at every turn. My aunt had to kowtow until her forehead bled to keep me, her niece, in the household. I understood my aunt's difficulties, and I knew my own clumsiness. Every day I was cautious and discreet, not daring to draw anyone's attention. The young ladies, seeing how well-behaved I was, offered to let me learn etiquette alongside them. I thanked them again and again. I thought that if I learned the rules well, someday I could marry into a good family, and then I would beg the madam's favor to take my aunt out and care for her. It would save her from having to endure day after day in this mansion. Since the old lady was still alive, the first and second branches of the Duke's mansion had not yet divided the family property. The young ladies of both branches were very kind, and though I had little interaction with the young masters, they were always polite when we met. Only Pei Qingyan showed disgust every time he saw me, often pretending not to see me even when I greeted him. When the mansion held a poetry gathering, inviting young ladies and gentlemen from various families, the eldest young lady, being kind-hearted, allowed me to join. I spent an hour carefully dressing up, trying on, and comparing the jewelry my aunt had given me over and over. I even took out the new clothes made for New Year's and put them on. Filled with excitement, I went to find the eldest young lady. I ran into Pei Qingyan. He stood under the corridor with a group of young men, staring at me for a moment. Soon after, several maids came to block my way. They said the heir had specifically ordered that I was not allowed to attend the poetry gathering. Some nearby young girls looked over and whispered, "Which young lady of the Duke's mansion is this? I've never seen her before." "Show, what kind of young lady is she?" "I heard she's the niece of the Duke's concubine, a rural girl who came seeking refuge. It's only out of kindness that the Duchess lets her stay in the mansion. That makes her a servant. Just look at how gaudily she's dressed. What's she up to? Who knows? Maybe she's trying to seduce some young master, just like her aunt, to become a concubine or mistress. That explains why the young heir won't let her go out." My feet felt nailed to the spot, and I could barely keep the smile on my face. My heart ached and swelled, pressing down so hard I could hardly breathe. I don't remember how I managed to walk back, but my expression must have been terrible. The moment my aunt asked, I broke down in tears. That coming-of-age ceremony was celebrated quietly with my aunt in our room.
But I was only sad for that one day.
What worried me more was whether I had offended Pei Qingyan. I learned to make some pastries and brought them to him every day, only to accidentally overhear his conversation with the eldest young lady. He said that Miss Liu, like her aunt, was a person greedy for wealth and status, and moreover, she thought herself clever, not realizing others saw through her schemes. "You are the legitimate daughter of the Duke's manor. Best to keep your distance from her in the future." The most secret thoughts of my heart were spoken aloud. I stood at the door, as if slapped across the face, my cheeks burning with shame. From that day on, I never went to see Pei Qingyan again. He was the lofty heir of the Duke's mansion, looking down on my concubine aunt, and even more so on me. I was afraid of angering him. I feared he might say something unpleasant that would spread outside, and even more that he would despise me and my aunt, and tamper with my marriage prospects. Fortunately, not long after, Pei Qingyan left to travel and study. His decision was sudden, and the old lady, distressed, tried to stop him, but the Duke persuaded her otherwise. He said a man should aspire to see the world, to understand the hardships of the common people. On the day of his departure, everyone saw him off. I stood at the very back, tiptoeing to look, and only let out a sigh of relief when the carriage truly disappeared into the distance. While he was away from the capital, I hurriedly sought a marriage arrangement. Pei Qingyan withdrew his hand and slowly followed behind me. "I remember you don't live here," he said. "I came to see my aunt. Logically, as a dependent in the Duke's mansion, I should stay in my aunt's courtyard, but the Duke occasionally lodges there. So the madam assigned me a spacious room from the servants' quarters, tidied it up, and let me live there. I was very satisfied. A country girl dependent on others, being able to have a room in the Duke's mansion was already excellent. I wanted to say that his courtyard wasn't in this direction either, but this was his estate, so it wasn't my place to question where he wanted to go. But as we were about to reach my aunt's courtyard gate and he was still following behind me, I finally couldn't help asking, "Does the heir have something to attend to?" Pei Qingyan gave a light cough, reached into his sleeve, and produced a rosewood box, handing it to me. "I saw this when I was traveling in Liangzhou. I thought it would suit you well." I took it and opened it. Inside lay a gilded mandarin duck hairpin. The duck's eyes were set with rubies. It was presumably a belated wedding gift for me. I thanked him, thinking that he was indeed a gentleman from a prestigious family. He clearly didn't like me, yet his courtesy was impeccable. After the polite words were exchanged, Pei Qingyan showed no sign of leaving. Having just accepted his gift, I couldn't very well leave before he did. Just as I was wondering what to say to him, the eldest young lady hurried over. "Big brother, what are you doing standing here alone? Grandmother and father are looking for you." Pei Qingyan was tall, and I was completely blocked by him. After taking a few steps, the eldest young lady noticed me as well, and a flicker of panic crossed her face. After a moment, everything returned to normal, but the panic was too obvious for me to ignore. Both she and Pei Qingyan were acting strangely today. Inside the room, Wu was lying in her aunt's arms, eating snacks, complaining that her father and mother didn't let her eat enough, and that she wanted to stay here with her maternal grandmother. My aunt hugged her and kissed her again and again, tears in her eyes. She was a person of little influence. Even keeping me, her niece, required bowing to everyone, let alone Wu, a granddaughter of the next generation. At dusk, Lu Zhao finished his shift and came to pick me up. Since we were at the manor, it was natural to pay respects to the elders. The Duke kept him to talk, and I waited outside the door. Wu was making noise. I feared she would disturb the elders, so I sent a maid to take her to the waterside pavilion to watch the fish. I heard movement behind me and turned around. It was Pei Qingyan. I quickly stood up and greeted him. The early spring evening still had a chill. As dusk fell, Pei Qingyan's eyes brightened, but his words left me bewildered. I have informed my father and will marry the legitimate daughter of Minister Lin as my principal wife. I suspected I had misheard. Why was Pei Qingyan telling me about his marriage? On the surface, I obediently replied, "Congratulations, Your Highness." Pei Qingyan was genuinely delighted and spoke many kind words about Miss Lin. He said she came from a prestigious family, generous and magnanimous. He said her mother never mistreated concubines and even recorded the children of concubines under her own name. I listened quietly, occasionally chiming in, but my mind was far away. Once the Lin family's daughter marries in, I'll ask my mother to betroth you to. The door opened and Lu Zhao walked out. The young man wore a vermilion casual robe, just like the first time I saw him. I looked at him and suddenly blushed. TSK, he knows exactly how to tempt me. I admit, when it comes to marrying Lu Zhao, his good looks were a very important reason. It was the third month after Pei Qingyan left. The young ladies, bored in the mansion, begged Madame to hold a polo match. Without him to meddle, I was finally able to join. The eldest miss tucked a flower in my hair, saying, "What's there to fear? If anyone asks, just say you're my maternal cousin." The second miss munched on pastries beside us. Yes, yes. Concubine Sue is practically our elder as well, so it's not wrong to say that. We can't let others look down on you. I lowered my head, my nose stinging, and felt like crying. Who would willingly treat themselves as a servant? I naturally couldn't play polo, let alone compose poems. So second miss took me to the garden to play hide and seek. I tied a silk ribbon over my eyes and groped around to catch someone. When I grabbed one, I had no idea which lady it was, so tall. A burst of exclamations rose around us. Second miss shouted, "Yun Yuan, let go of him quickly." I hastily stepped back, untied the ribbon, and met a pair of smiling peach blossom eyes. That was my first time seeing Lu Zhao. He was also from Qingzhou, from a poor family, but exceptionally talented. He passed the imperial exam at just 20. Chancellor Zhao wanted him to marry his daughter, but he refused, so he was pushed aside to become a canonist at the National Academy, a ninth-rank official, no different from a commoner in the capital. I felt a kindred spirit with him. We talked a lot, and often exchanged letters. On the Lantern Festival, he invited me to view the lanterns. The glow illuminated Lu Zhao's jade-like face as he asked if I would marry him. I was both happy and sad. I harbored a secret, never telling him that I wasn't a proper cousin lady. If anything, I was just an unworthy girl. Lu Zhao's expression softened. "You're a common girl, and I'm a minor official. A perfect match. Besides," he paused, "my family background is simple. After we marry, you'll have full say in the household. One day, if the chance arises, we can even bring your aunt over." I agreed. Lu Zhao emptied out his years of savings. He prepared the 3 letters and 6 rights, with all the required matchmakers and witnesses. Everything that others had, we lacked nothing. 3 days later, during our return visit, he respectfully bowed to my aunt. Snapping back to reality, I saw Lu Zhao had already walked to my side. He clasped his hands and greeted Pei Qingyan. "Greetings, young prince." Pei Qingyan glanced at him, then at my flushed face, his tone not so pleasant. "Word has it that Minister Liu is as handsome as Panin." I didn't believe it, but seeing you today, I must say the rumors don't do justice. My face still burned. Hearing this, I humbly replied, "Not at all. If you ask me, the young prince is the more handsome one." Pei Qingyan suddenly covered his mouth and coughed, his face reddening from the effort. The sky had darkened, and the elderly lady's maidservant came with a lantern to invite Pei Qingyan to Showan Hall for dinner. Under the crabapple blossom hanging gate, Wu, holding a maid's hand, stumbled and ran toward us. Pei Qingyan happened to bump into him. He asked, "Whose child is this?" It was Lord Lu's daughter. Lu Zhao actually had a child. Pei Qingyan recalled his earlier behavior and couldn't help but let out a wry smile. Even if Lu Yuan thought Lu Zhao was handsome, so what? That was the same Lu Zhao who refused to marry even the Chancellor Zhao's daughter, who was ground down in the Imperial Academy for 4 or 5 years, passed the Jinshi examination, and finally caught the Emperor's eye with his martial skills on the proving ground. How could a man like that possibly take a liking to Lu Yuan? He wondered which noble lady could be Lady Lu to have made Lu Zhao bow his head. Pei Qingyan thought about it and sent a servant to prepare a gift. The duke's mansion had hereditary official positions, but he himself preferred to enter officialdom through the imperial examinations. He would go to Lu Zhao's residence tomorrow to seek advice and also apologize for today's incident. His earlier behavior had truly been somewhat rude. The next day, Pei Qingyan timed his departure well. Lu Zhao lived in the southwestern corner of the capital, beneath a green locust tree, a small two-courtyard residence. Pei Qingyan looked up at the plaque reading Lu Residence.
He felt it was rather shabby.
The gatekeeper accepted his visiting card and invited him to sit in the front hall. Our master hasn't returned from court yet, Prince Pei. Please wait a moment. This servant will call for the lady. Pei Qingyan found it strange. He had never met Madame Lu, so there was no reason for a woman from the inner quarters to receive a guest. But since he was in the Lu residence and couldn't gauge the situation, he had no choice but to follow the servant. Though the Lu residence was small, it was tastefully arranged. At the entrance of the main hall stood a copper lampstand with intertwined branches. On the north wall hung several ink landscape paintings, and 2 weeping willows were planted in the front courtyard. He remembered that Lu Yuanyuan liked these trees, saying they were her surname. Thinking of Lu Yuanyuan, Pei Qingyan unconsciously curled his lips. He walked under the tree and thought. In the future, he could transplant a few of the same trees into her courtyard. Just as he was thinking, he seemed to hear Lu Yuanyuan's voice. It sounded so real. He instinctively turned around. Lu Yuanyuan was holding a child and calling out to him. Why has the heir come? He remembered that child. He had seen him just yesterday. The maidservant said it was from Master Lu's household. The hand hidden beneath his sleeve trembled violently. A guess formed in his mind, but he couldn't bring himself to believe it. Pei Qingyan persisted, asking, "Why are you here?" He hoped for mercy from heaven, hoping to receive the answer he wanted. Lu Yuanyuan's brow furrowed slightly as she said, "Young master, you're confused. This is my home." He couldn't hear what came after. Young master, young master. I held wooer and waved a hand in front of his eyes a few times. Pei Qingyan looked at me with a somewhat icy smile. You're married? Yes, I nodded submissively. Didn't the young master give me a congratulatory gift just yesterday? Pei Qingyan laughed as if he had heard the biggest joke, tears streaming from his laughter. The child is already this big. It seems you married not long after I left. At that time, Lu Zhao was just a lowly 9th rank official. Miss Lu, didn't you always want to marry above your station? And yet you were willing to marry him. Even as dull as I was, I could hear the sarcasm in Pei Qingyan's words. I glared at him. The young master jokes. I am merely the niece of a concubine in the duke's mansion. Even a 9th rank official is a step up for me. I really wanted to slap him twice, but my aunt was still in the duke's mansion. I could only have someone take Wu away first. Young master, I know you don't like me. In the past, at the duke's mansion, you looked down on me, thinking I was dull and vulgar and that I foolishly dreamed of marrying into a high family. But, young lord, I have asked myself and I have done nothing wrong to you or your family. The duke's mansion took me in, and I am extremely grateful. Every day before dawn, I would go to the young ladies' rooms to comb their hair, serve tea, hold umbrellas, and fan them. A personal maid could even get 2 taels of monthly allowance, but since I entered the mansion, all my expenses have been provided by my aunt. You say I am vain and greedy, and I admit it, but no one in this world is willing to be a servant for life. Now that I have finally married, do you still come to my door to humiliate me, young lord? Pei Qingyan was stunned. He let out a few low laughs. So, this is what you think. You married someone else, then what about me? Pei Qingyan straightened up and stared at me. I finally understood my own feelings, but you tell me you are married, and your child is already this old. Lu Yuanyuan, you really have a cruel heart. A bold thought formed in my mind. Young lord, you don't mean to say that you like me, do you? But just yesterday you told me you were going to marry Miss Lin. Pei Qingyan suddenly froze. I gradually caught on, and my face slowly turned cold. My voice carried a sarcasm I hadn't even noticed myself. I understand now. The young lord likes me, yet he thinks I'm vain, vulgar, and lowly. He can't admit to himself that he actually fell for someone as worthless as me. After 3 years of study, he must have come to some realization, so out of his great mercy, he decided to honor me by making me his concubine. Pei Qingyan, do you think that the moment you mention this, I should weep with gratitude for your condescension? The noble heir of the duke's mansion actually fell for a country girl like me and is kind enough to take me as his concubine? Don't you think you're being so deeply devoted? Pei Qingyan panicked and turned his head away, his voice low and hoarse. No, it's not like that. The more I thought about it, the angrier I grew. I went back inside, grabbed a teacup, and threw it at him.
Bah.
Some young lord you are. You conceited dog of a man. Do you think everyone in the world is begging to be your concubine? Get out of here now. Pei Qingyan practically fled in disgrace. But 3 days later, he came again. The gatekeeper, under orders, didn't dare let him in and said cautiously, Pei Qingyan has been standing in the rain for 2 hours already. I was exasperated and told him to scram, saying that even if he caught a cold and died from the rain, I wouldn't see him. But the gatekeeper didn't leave. He hesitated and said, but the heir Pei said to let Madam think about concubine Sue. In the alley, Pei Qingyan stood stiffly, his wet hair plastered to his temples. Water droplets dripping from his jaw one by one, like an aged jade statue in a desolate place. I stood under the eaves and pulled my cloak tighter. What are you looking for me for, heir? Pei Qingyan revealed a somewhat ingratiating smile. Yuan, I have already withdrawn from the marriage with the Lin family. Divorce Lu Zhaohe, and I will treat Wooer as my own. I pretended not to hear and pulled the courtyard door shut with a heavy thud. At the moment it closed, a hand with distinct knuckles squeezed in, and a low muffled grunt came from outside. Are you crazy? I instinctively let go. The center of Pei Qingyan's palm was bruised purple, but he acted as if he felt no pain, still pressing the door tightly, a morbid obsession in his eyes. He, Lu Zhao, can give you the status of principal wife, and so can I, Yuan. Why can't you just look at me? In the rain, Pei Qingyan's eyes were red, nearly bleeding. I suddenly laughed. Pei Qingyan, do you truly not understand? If I marry you, then Aunt will indeed be a concubine in the Duke's mansion for the rest of her life. If you must blame someone, blame your own birth. Pei Qingyan's expression gradually darkened. So that's it. He let out a few bitter, self-mocking laughs. Then his eyes turned sinister again. What do you think, he said, if Lu Zhao finds out that you are a person who craves wealth and status? What will happen? I know. He has 1,000 ways to paint me in a bad light. I wanted to say, Lu Zhao is not you. He knows my hardships and pities my toil. But before I could speak, a familiar voice came over. Lu Zhao strode before me. The heir speaks in jest. If not for wealth and status, is one to crave poverty and hardship? Lu Zhao looked straight at him. The heir has been traveling and studying for 3 years, so he should know the hardships of the people. Aunt lost her mother at 6 and supported herself by washing clothes. Later, her father fell gravely ill, and she had no choice but to sell herself. Yuan lost his father at 2 and his mother at 10. He is all alone, traveling thousands of miles to find relatives. If they had nowhere else to go, they wouldn't have knocked on the gates of your Duke's mansion. It is a shame to our nation that there are daughters selling themselves to save their fathers, and children left without parents to care for them. Instead of learning from this, you, the heir, look down on them from your high position. I, Lu Zhao, am unworthy, only regretting that I am not wealthy enough to ensure there are no more women like Aunt and Yuan in this world. I quietly squeezed Lu Zhao's hand, my eyes growing hot. Pei Qingyan watched our clasped hands and curled his lips into a cold smile. Yuan, it's fine that you won't agree to me now. After all, concubine Sue is still in the Duke's mansion. We have plenty of time. He then cast a meaningful glance at Lu Zhao. Lord Lu truly has a noble character and cares for the people. I just hope you won't regret it later. Soon I understood what Pei Qingyan meant. Lu Zhao's assignments in the Ministry of Revenue were repeatedly disrupted, and his superiors no longer favored him as before. Even the books he had copied at the Imperial Academy were being taken out and inspected one by one. He returned later and later, the dark circles under his eyes growing heavier each day. At night, I whispered to him, Lu Zhao, do you blame me? Do you resent me for my humble family background, forcing you to struggle step by step in the officialdom, for stirring up trouble that ruined years of your hard work? Lu Zhao sighed softly and reached out to ruffle my hair. With green hills as our betrothal gift and flowing water as our matchmaker, we are now wedded and bound forever on the Mandarin Duck Registry. Yuan, you underestimate yourself, and you underestimate me as well. I held him tighter. 2 months later, I discovered I was pregnant. Pei Qingyan grew increasingly hostile toward Lu Zhao, and fearing I would overthink during the pregnancy, He refused to tell me anything. Until that day, a rainy summer day. I was warming ginger soup in the flower hall, waiting for him. Raindrops pattered on the blue stone slabs when a figure rushed into the room, not even bothering with an umbrella. It was the eldest Mississippi. She clutched her chest, panting. Yuan, His Majesty issued an edict this morning, stripping Lu Zhao of his post in the Ministry of Revenue and ordering him to be a county magistrate in Qingzhou. When does he leave? Tomorrow. The soup bowl crashed to the ground. If I leave, what about Aunt? The eldest Miss gripped my hand. This came suddenly. I only just found out myself. Lu Zhao is at the Ministry of Revenue handling handovers. He probably won't be back tonight. Concubine Sue's luggage has been packed. Once night falls, you'll drive the carriage and wait at the west side gate. Qingzhou is far over the mountains, and my brother's influence doesn't reach that far. I held her close, tears streaming uncontrollably. But young miss, what will you do? If the Duke finds out, the eldest young lady's eyes reddened. This was Mother's decision.
Don't worry about me.
In the end, we are the ones who have wronged you, making you travel so hard while pregnant. I hastily packed the luggage. In the carriage, Wuer's eyes sparkled. Mother, are we going to pick up grandmother? Thunder roared, and rain poured down. She was frightened and covered her ears. I pulled her into my arms and murmured to myself, yes, to pick up grandmother. The west side gate slowly opened. A figure gradually emerged in the darkness. It was Pei Qingyan. Aunt was supported by several maids, standing behind him. I was almost pleading. Pei Qingyan, I beg you. I will burn incense and pray to Buddha for the rest of my life. Pray to the Bodhisattva for your safety?
Impossible.
He refused with finality, a cold arc curling at the corner of his mouth. If you can't bear to leave your aunt, then stay here. I can afford to support Wuer and the one in your belly. Aunt glared at him, grinding her teeth. You lecher. Then she turned to me with tears in her eyes. Yuan, you go.
Don't worry about me.
I raised you, not for you to end up trapped here like me. Lu Zhao is a good child. He will treat you well. Pei Qingyan's expression was somewhat manic as he leaned close to Aunt. Aunt, I will also treat Yuan well, even better than Lu Zhao. Pa. Aunt spat in his face. You're just unwilling to accept it, unwilling that Yuan didn't choose you. If you truly cared for her, how could you bear to make her suffer your temper while pregnant? Pei Qingyan was stunned for a moment. In that instant, Aunt suddenly broke free from the maids and charged straight at the rockery. Yuan, don't let me hold you back. Aunt's scream pierced the sky. I leaned out to reach her, but the maidservant behind me held on tightly, afraid I would fall off the carriage and harm the pregnancy. A quick-handed maid caught my aunt just as she was about to collide, wrapping her arms around her waist. I collapsed limply into my seat. Pei Qingyan waved his hand behind him, his face dark enough to drip water. Take concubine Sue back to the courtyard. If anything happens to her, you will all be buried with her. The rain grew heavier. I got off the carriage, snatched my aunt from the maid's arms, and walked step by step outward. Pei Qingyan stood before me, silently at a stalemate. I took out a dagger and handed it to him. Either kill me, or let me go. Pei Qingyan stared fixedly at the dagger. Several glass lanterns appeared in the rain, and a woman's voice rang out. Let her go. It's the madam. Mother. Pei Qingyan's eyes bulged with rage. The crisp sound of a slap echoed in the courtyard. The madam's gaze was even more resolute than his. Haven't you always asked why she chose Lu Zhao? Today, if the roles were reversed, Lu Zhao would surely let her go. That is the reason. Pei Qingyan stood frozen, his eyes vacant like an empty shell. Mother, I knew her first, he choked out, his voice cracking. At the poetry gathering before my travels. She looked stunning that day. Even the sons of the Grand Counselor and the General of Wei Yuan were left dumbfounded. I was vexed but couldn't understand why. I had them stop her from coming. Only later did I learn that day was her coming-of-age ceremony. I wanted to apologize, but feared losing face. I thought, she's still in the manor after all. There's no rush for an apology. I always believed we had all the time in the world. If only I had recognized my feelings sooner, would we have? Pei Qingyan, lost in memory, spoke with such earnestness that the eldest young lady, catching him off guard, struck him with a knife-hand blow and knocked him out. I quickly pulled my aunt outside. Madam held an umbrella for her and suddenly called out, Wani. They stood very close, and my aunt seemed to say something I couldn't catch. Even after we had walked far, I could still see Madame standing there under the umbrella. The carriage headed east all the way. The rain stopped, and my aunt lifted the curtain, gazing at the distant horizon. I never thought I'd return one day. I covered her hand. Our hometown is thousands of miles away. The two daughters of Qingzhou are going home. The place where Lu Zhao serves is called Kangwu County. The land was dry and barren, with entrenched clans everywhere. As soon as I stepped off the carriage, a crowd surged from a street corner. "Good sir, have mercy. Give us some food, please." The yamen runners shooed them away with staffs. "Move aside. If you offend the magistrate, you'll be sorry." I waved my hand to stop them and ordered congee to be prepared. The little beggars wolfed down the congee, their faces smeared with the porridge. They were clearly ravenous, with a stubborn persistence towards food. Upon closer inspection, all 10 or so of them turned out to be girls. Fearing bullying, they had cut their hair very short. I bought a shop along the street and opened an embroidery workshop, taking them in. I taught them spinning and embroidery so they could support themselves. On an early summer afternoon, I held my little daughter Qinglan as I supervised their work.
The girls chattered around me.
Madam, look, how is my peony embroidery? Madam, what's for dinner tonight? Tomorrow is the 15th. Madam, will you take us to Chuyin Temple to offer incense? I heard the Bodhisattva there is very efficacious. What's the point of praying to the Buddha? Better to go fishing, at least that fills the belly. I want to pray to the goddess of mercy. The lady will protect us. She is the goddess of mercy. The goddess of mercy doesn't provide food. The lady is even better than the goddess of mercy. All you know is eating. Qinggu doubled over with laughter. At home, she mimicked the conversation for Lu Zhao, and my face turned red. They made me out to be far too kind. Lu Zhao chuckled softly. Your mother has always been this good. I've known it for a long time. My aunt held Qinglan, teaching her to babble, Mama good. Outside the window, the pomegranate blossoms were in full bloom. It was the summer of the 11th year of Qingping. End of the main story. Extra. The Duchess of the State. The first time I saw Suwani, I was only 10. Mother went to the slave market to buy a maid, and I insisted on coming along. Among all those grimy faces, I spotted her at once. She was exquisitely beautiful, willow leaf eyebrows, almond-shaped eyes. When she looked at you, they seemed to shimmer and speak. She grew up with me, accompanied me when I married. Later, my husband, drunk, forced himself on her. She went from being my maid to Pei Xiao's concubine. I began to resent her beauty, her obedience, resent that she conceived the first child of the Duke's mansion before me. I had someone send her safflower, but later regretted it. She was so good, her child would surely be just as good as her. The Duke's mansion was vast. I walked hurriedly, the maids gradually unable to keep up. I walked faster and faster, then began to run. The sticky summer wind clung to me as sweat and tears streamed down together. The courtyard was very quiet. Everything was over. Only a faint, broken moan came from inside the room. I issued an order that she need not attend the morning and evening greetings, nor any family banquets, large or small. Everyone said I was magnanimous and generous, treating the concubine well. But in truth, I simply dared not see her again. The Duke's mansion was vast, with flowing corridors and carved beams. So vast that when we met again, many years had passed. She brought a little girl covered in dust. She kowtowed, begging me to take her in. When the child lifted her head, she had eyes just like hers. It was actually easy to notice that Qing Yan had grown fond of the child. Having grown up under the old lady's care, even if he disliked someone in his heart, his demeanor remained proper. Only Lu Yuanyuan was different. He wouldn't speak to her, wouldn't greet her, saying she was dull and clumsy, calling her taste vulgar. Wearing red and green, yet he couldn't even remember what his own sister liked to wear. I looked at Yuanyuan, yes, who wouldn't love her. She was different from Wani. Not exceptionally stunning in appearance, but still captivating, like a pearl covered in dust. Only by wiping away the mist could one see the lustrous glow within. I had Shuer keep an eye on the two, before Qing Yan realized his own feelings. I persuaded him to go on a study trip. By the time he returned, everything was already settled. I had thought that if I could keep it hidden until Qing Yan got married, it would be fine. The Lin girl was gentle and considerate, talented, and had admired him for years. He would settle down. Shuer was also helping. She had always been clever. If she were a man, she would do even better than Qing Yan. If she were a man, I wouldn't have married Yuan to someone else. But he still found out. The pearl right under his nose was taken away, driving him somewhat mad. He refused the marriage proposal from the Lin family, repeatedly impeached in court, forcing Lu Zhao to be sent away. Yuan came in the dead of night to take Wan Yi away, but Qing Yan refused. He understood that Wan Yi was Yuan's only concern in the duke's residence. That night, heavy rain fell, the sound of rain and wooden fish beating together in my heart. Before her marriage, my mother had said that Wan Yi was beautiful and the duke's residence was not a good place. I was the one holding on to hope. I was the one unwilling to be separated from her. A single thought led to ruining her life. If I am to blame anyone, it is only myself. I pushed open the door and heard my own voice. Let her go. The carriage drove away, the rain stopped, and the sound of the wooden fish ceased. Will the Buddha forgive me? Will she forgive me? In the 5th year after Lu Zhao left, the reigning emperor passed away. The young emperor ascended the throne, and Empress Dowager Jiang ruled from behind the curtain, suppressing aristocratic families and promoting humble clans. Lu Zhao and Yuan had earned a reputation for virtue in Qingzhou, catching the Empress Dowager's eye. From small county magistrates to provincial governors, it took only 3 years. Qing Yan grew increasingly silent after that. He knew there was no possibility between him and Yuan anymore, yet he still refused to take a wife. I advised him several times, and he said, in the future, he would adopt a child from Shuer's daughter. Now that Empress Dowager Jiang was in power, women could also inherit titles, so I stopped trying to dissuade him. Shua was raised by my own hands. Since childhood, she studied the 4 books and 5 classics, wrote poetry at 7, and composed rhapsodies at 10. When she was 12, the boys went to Lushan Academy. She packed her bags, only to be stopped at the mansion's gate. The old madam punished her by making her kneel in the ancestral hall. She knelt, and I knelt too, knelt for my failure in teaching her, knelt for my indecisiveness, knelt because I knew full well she was a girl. Yet I insisted on teaching her to read and write, to understand reason and righteousness. I knelt because I couldn't have borne her a son, dooming her to be inferior from birth. Qing Yan adopted Shuer's second daughter, naming her Pei Qinghe. When Qinghe was 7, she needed to choose a personal maid. Among a dusty crowd at the broker's, she picked the prettiest one. The little girl was clever, prostrating herself before her. This servant thanks the young lady for her great kindness. I looked at her and remembered the last time I saw Wan Yi. The night rain soaked through my clothes. I hastily pulled off my hairpin and tucked it into her bundle. Under the oil paper umbrella, those eyes shone startlingly bright. The girl called out to me, "Miss, your great kindness. I will repay it in my next life, even if I must become a blade of grass or a ring to do so." I watched her leave. In your next life, may you be born into a good family, with a harmonious marriage, children and grandchildren all around, safe and joyful, with a smooth and happy life. And may you never meet me again.